Imagine calling for an ambulance only to be told that the weather is too severe and you'll have to wait until tomorrow. Imagine paying $28 for a single head of lettuce. Imagine going 4 months without ever seeing the sun. Now imagine choosing that life, not being trapped in it, but actively choosing it. Canada is home to 292 remote and isolated communities. 96 of them have no road access whatsoever. They never have, and in many cases they probably never will. Every person, every supply shipment, and every visitor arrives by air. Roughly 200,000 people live in these places, and nearly 80% are Indigenous communities whose histories stretch back thousands of years in regions that many Canadians could not locate on a map. What I wanted to understand was simple. Why stay when a jug of milk costs $18 and the closest hospital is over 1,000 kilometers away? When darkness lasts for months and freezing temperatures can become life-threatening within minutes, why not leave? The answers I found were far different from what I expected. These are 12 of Canada's most isolated communities, and the real reasons people continue to call them home. Number 12. Grise Fjord. Population: 130. Located on the southern coast of Ellesmere Island in Nunavut, it is Canada's northernmost civilian settlement. The nearest hospital is in Iqaluit, approximately 1,160 kilometers away. That number is correct. If someone suffers a heart attack in Grise Fjord, survival may depend entirely on whether weather conditions allow a medical evacuation flight to land. A 4-liter jug of milk can cost anywhere from $16 to $20. A return flight to Ottawa often costs between $5,000 and $7,000. Average January temperatures hover between -35 and -40 degrees Celsius. From late October until the middle of February, the sun never rises. 4 straight months of polar darkness. Take a moment to think about that. The remarkable thing about Grise Fjord is that it was never supposed to exist in its current form. In 1953, the Canadian government relocated Inuit families from northern Quebec and Pond Inlet to the high Arctic. Officially, the move was presented as a way to ease hunting pressures. In reality, it was largely intended to strengthen Canadian sovereignty during the Cold War. Families were promised improved hunting opportunities and assured they could return home if they wished. Neither promise was honored. In 2010, the Government of Canada issued a formal apology for the High Arctic relocation program. Today, it is widely acknowledged as one of the most troubling chapters in modern Canadian history. Yet the descendants of those relocated families chose to remain. 3 generations later, they transformed what began as a place of exile into a home they deeply value and fiercely defend. One elder whose relatives were among those first relocated explained it this way: "They brought us here without our consent, but our children and grandchildren decided to stay. That means something. This is Inuit land now." The community survives through a mix of government jobs, subsistence harvesting, and extraordinary resilience. Traditional foods such as seal, muskox, narwhal, and Arctic char are not merely cultural symbols. They are essential for feeding families when store-bought food costs so much. Everyone knows everyone else. When one person struggles, the community responds. The isolation that separates Grise Fjord from the outside world creates a powerful sense of unity within it. Moving to number 11. Old Crow, Yukon. Population: 245. Old Crow is the only community in Yukon without road access. The settlement is fly-in only, located roughly 800 kilometers north of Whitehorse, beyond the Arctic Circle. A return flight generally costs between $800 and $1,200. Groceries are commonly 2 to 3 times more expensive than in Whitehorse. The nearest hospital is also about 800 kilometers away. What makes Old Crow fundamentally different from Grise Fjord is its history. This is not a settlement created through government relocation. The Vuntut Gwich'in have lived in this region for at least 20,000 years. That statement is not an exaggeration. Archaeological discoveries at the nearby Bluefish Caves provide the oldest known evidence of human activity in Canada. When local residents say, "This is our home," they are describing a connection that stretches back roughly 15,000 years before the pyramids of Egypt were ever built. Old Crow occupies land that has never been connected by road. Consider that for a moment. 20,000 years of continuous human presence, yet no permanent road links it to the rest of Canada. The community exists because of the porcupine caribou herd, one of North America's largest migrations, with approximately 200,000 animals moving through the region annually. The Gwich'in call themselves the Caribou People, and they mean it literally. When the herd arrives, the community heads out to hunt. It provides food security, reinforces culture, and strengthens identity all at once. Old Crow is also home to a self-governing First Nation that manages its own affairs. The Vuntut Gwich'in successfully negotiated both a land claim settlement and a self-government agreement. They operate their own government institutions, their own educational system through Chief Zedje Gitlit School, where Gwich'in language and traditions are woven into everyday learning, and their own community health programs. Children grow up speaking Gwich'in, learning traditional skills on the land, and developing a strong sense of who they are. As one resident put it, the South has more things, but it doesn't have what makes us who we are. A young mother who returned after attending university explained it similarly. She left for school in British Columbia and experienced homesickness and cultural disconnection. Eventually, she came back to raise her children. Today, her kids hunt caribou alongside their uncles and grandfather. They speak Gwich'in every day. She traded shopping malls, restaurants, and entertainment options for something she could not find anywhere else. The challenges are undeniable. Winter darkness lasts for long periods. Employment opportunities are limited. The cost of imported goods remains extremely high. Climate change is also altering caribou migration patterns, threatening the very foundation of Gwich'in life. One elder and former chief who played a key role in negotiating land claims summarized it perfectly. "We are the caribou people. As long as the caribou come, we will be here." The concern that keeps many leaders awake at night is obvious. What happens if the caribou stop coming? Number 10 takes us to Nain, Labrador. Population: 1,125. Nain is the northernmost permanent community in Newfoundland and Labrador. Located on Labrador's northern coast, it has no road connection to the outside world. Residents reach Nain either by regular flights from Happy Valley Goose Bay, about 370 kilometers away, or by coastal ferry during summer. A return flight to Goose Bay generally costs between $700 and $900, while a trip to Street John's can easily exceed $1,500. A bag of flour that sells for $12 in Street John's may cost more than $25 in Nain. What makes Nain especially important is that it serves as the administrative center of Nunatsiavut. In 2005, Nunatsiavut became Canada's first self-governing Inuit region. Following centuries of colonization, displacement, and the devastating legacy of residential schools, Labrador Inuit gained the ability to govern themselves from this remote coastal community. The Nunatsiavut government headquarters in Nain stands as one of the most advanced public facilities north of Goose Bay. It represents Indigenous self-government functioning in practice rather than theory. Nain also serves as the gateway to Torngat Mountains National Park, one of the most breathtaking and least visited national parks in Canada. Polar bears are a constant reality here. The Torngat region contains one of the highest polar bear densities anywhere on Earth. Residents regularly discuss bear safety because encounters are a genuine concern. The landscape itself is extraordinary. Across the water rise the mountains of the Torngat Range. Fjords, rocky barrens, islands, and the edge of the boreal forest create scenery that travelers spend thousands of dollars to experience. For local residents, it is simply home. A local hunter who also works seasonally as a tourism guide described it this way: "The land takes care of us. I hunt caribou, fish, and harvest seal. My freezer feeds my family. I guide visitors to see polar bears and still make it home for supper. Try doing that in Toronto." He briefly left Nain to work in Happy Valley Goose Bay, but eventually returned because he missed the coast, the hunting, and the lifestyle. A young professional who came back after university to work for the Nunatsiavut government explained her decision differently. "In Street John's, I was just another person. Here I can make a difference. Here my work matters." For her, that was worth far more than restaurants, nightlife, or convenience. The challenges remain significant. Social opportunities are limited. The dating pool is small. Internet service can be frustrating. Any serious medical emergency still requires a medical evacuation flight. Yet she believes she is helping build something meaningful. Nunatsiavut is governed by Labrador Inuit. That achievement carries weight. Let's move on to number 9, Fort Chipewyan, Alberta. Population: 845. Fort Chipewyan, commonly known as Fort Chip, holds a unique place in Canadian history. Established in 1788, it is Alberta's oldest European-founded settlement, created nearly a century before Alberta even became a province. It predates every major city in Western Canada. Yet after more than 2 centuries, it still lacks a permanent year-round road connection. The community sits on the western shore of Lake Athabasca, one of Canada's largest lakes, roughly 220 kilometers north of Fort McMurray. Residents can fly in throughout the year, with flights taking around 30 minutes. During winter, they can use the seasonal ice road when conditions allow, usually for 6 to 8 weeks between December and March. In summer, travel by boat along the Athabasca River remains another option. That winter ice road is far more important than many outsiders realize. During the short period when trucks can access the community, residents purchase supplies in bulk and prepare for the months ahead. However, climate change has steadily shortened the season. Over the last 50 years, the road has lost nearly a month of reliable operating time. Freeze-up comes later, and spring breakup arrives earlier. Many residents worry about what happens if that connection eventually disappears altogether. Fort Chipewyan's relationship with Alberta's oil sands industry is complicated. Fort McMurray serves as the regional economic center, and oil sands operations provide employment opportunities for many people. Some residents work rotational schedules at the mines, earning strong incomes before returning home to fish, hunt, and spend time with family. Others remain deeply concerned about environmental impacts from upstream development. Elders who have spent decades on the land often say the fish are different than they once were, and that changes in the delta are becoming increasingly noticeable. The debate over economic opportunity versus environmental protection remains a constant reality within the community. Number 8. Kugluktuk, Nunavut. Population 1,491. Situated at the mouth of the Coppermine River where it flows into the Arctic Ocean, Kugluktuk is Nunavut's westernmost settlement. The nearest road-connected community is Yellowknife, located approximately 870 kilometers away by air. Return airfare typically ranges from $1,500 to $2,000. A jug of milk can easily cost between $12 and $15. What makes Kugluktuk particularly fascinating is its long history. The Copper Inuit have occupied this region for thousands of years. Their name comes from the native copper found locally, which they used to create tools long before European contact. In fact, this represented one of the few examples of indigenous metalworking north of Mexico. Today, the land continues to support local people, although in new ways. Nearby mining operations extract gold and diamonds, providing employment opportunities for residents. Some workers spend part of their time at modern mines, and the rest hunting caribou using knowledge passed down through countless generations. Ancient traditions and modern industry coexist side by side. One hunter who balances mine work with traditional harvesting described it this way: "Where else could I hunt caribou and earn this kind of income? The mine gives me a good living, and when I'm off work, I'm out on the land." He admitted that mining is not without problems. Still, it allows many residents to remain in their home community instead of moving permanently to larger cities. Yet there is a growing concern that everyone shares. Caribou populations have been declining, and that worries nearly every family in the region. Now we arrive at number 7, Pond Inlet, Nunavut. Population 1,617. If there is a contender for the most visually stunning community in the Canadian Arctic, Pond Inlet would be near the top of the list. Located on northern Baffin Island along Eclipse Sound and facing Bylot Island, the community is surrounded by glaciers, mountains, and an astonishing number of icebergs. During summer, hundreds of icebergs may drift past the shoreline. That is not an exaggeration. Huge sections of ice, calved from glaciers in Greenland and Baffin Island, move through the area, creating one of the world's most impressive iceberg landscapes. Residents wake up each day to views that filmmakers spend enormous budgets trying to capture. The Inuit name for Pond Inlet is Mitimatalik, meaning the place where Mittima is buried. Local people call themselves the Mitimataling Mute, the people of this place, and their ancestors have lived here for thousands of years. One of the defining features of the community is narwhal hunting. Pond Inlet is known across the Arctic for its connection to these remarkable animals. Every summer, narwhal migrate into the area, and local hunters pursue them using techniques and knowledge handed down through generations. Matak, the raw skin and blubber of narwhal, is shared widely throughout the community. The practice reflects traditions of collective support and food sharing that have existed for centuries. Tourism has also become increasingly important. Pond Inlet serves as a gateway to Sermilik National Park. Cruise ships visit during the warmer months, bringing travelers eager to see polar bears, narwhal, and towering icebergs. A young guide who also creates traditional carvings explained the significance of tourism. "Tourism gives us another reason to stay," he said. I get to show visitors our culture and our land. I earn a living sharing the things I care about most. His grandmother survived the residential school system. His mother helped restore cultural traditions. Now he is introducing those traditions to visitors from around the world. To me, that's progress, he said. An elder who has spent half a century hunting narwhal possesses an enormous amount of traditional knowledge regarding ice conditions, weather patterns, and wildlife behavior. When asked why he stays, his answer was straightforward. The narwhal brought our people here, and they keep us here. When I sit at the ice edge waiting for narwhal, I'm doing the same thing my grandfather did, and his grandfather before him. Why would I leave that behind? Still, he worries about the future. Ice conditions are changing rapidly. Weather patterns have become less predictable. Hunting is becoming more dangerous, and climate change concerns him deeply. The difficulties of life in Pond Inlet are familiar across much of the Arctic. Costs are extremely high. Housing shortages and overcrowding remain major issues. A return flight to Ottawa can cost approximately $4,000. Fresh fruits and vegetables are difficult to obtain. Long periods of winter darkness challenge mental health, while access to mental health services remains limited. Yet the elder summarized his perspective with a simple observation. The South has everything, except the things that matter. We still have the things that matter. Number 6. Pawletuq, Northwest Territories. Population, 265. Even among northern communities, Pawletuq is exceptionally remote. Located along Darnley Bay on the Arctic coast, it lies roughly 400 kilometers by air from Inuvik, which itself is far from being a large urban center. A return flight to Inuvik generally costs between $800 and $1,200, while traveling to Yellowknife can exceed $2,000. Pawletuq sits near the entrance to Tuktut Nogate National Park, an extraordinary wilderness of canyons, rivers, and waterfalls that very few people ever experience. The irony is that Pawletuq is the community closest to the park, yet there is no road leading into it. Visitors must either charter aircraft or undertake a challenging multi-day trek starting from the community. The park protects the calving grounds of the Bluenose caribou herd, the same herd that local residents have depended on for thousands of years. Conservation and traditional land use exist side by side. The people who rely on the caribou are also the closest stewards of the landscape that helps protect them. The Inuvialuit community in Pawletuq is deeply interconnected. In a settlement of only 265 people, nearly everyone knows one another. When help is needed, people step forward without hesitation. As one resident explained, that's simply the Inuvialuit way. A local hunter and guide who has spent his entire life in Pawletuq offered a similarly direct explanation for staying. This is home. The caribou are here. The beluga are here. The land is here. Everything I need is already here. Why would I choose somewhere else? He laughed and added, "The South has stores. We have the land." For him, the choice is obvious. Life in Pawletuq comes with serious challenges. Living costs are extremely high. Community services are limited. Access to medical care requires significant travel. Satellite internet remains slow and expensive, while cellular coverage barely exists beyond the settlement itself. During winter, darkness and severe cold restrict many outdoor activities. There have been times when poor weather prevented aircraft from landing, effectively cutting the community off from the outside world. Medical emergencies under those circumstances can become genuinely frightening. Yet the traditional economy remains important. Caribou and beluga continue to provide substantial food resources. The land still supports local people much as it has for thousands of years. For those who thrive in this environment, there is little traffic, minimal crime, and a level of peace that is difficult to find elsewhere. Many residents wake up, head onto the land, and spend their days connected to a lifestyle that has endured for generations. Not everyone could adapt to the isolation, darkness, or limited services, but the people who remain have found something that makes every sacrifice worthwhile. Number 5 is harder to talk about. Toodoul Lake, Manitoba. Population 350. This is one of Manitoba's most isolated communities, accessible only by plane, approximately 500 kilometers from Thompson. A round-trip flight costs $800 to $1,200. No road has ever reached Toodoul Lake. To understand why people stay, you need to understand why the community exists. In 1956, the Canadian government forcibly relocated the Saisi Dene from their traditional lands at Little Duck Lake to Churchill, Manitoba. Officials claimed it would improve their lives and protect declining caribou herds. What followed was devastating. Families were placed near the town dump with little housing, few opportunities, and almost no support. They were separated from the caribou hunting grounds that had sustained them for thousands of years. Many died from exposure, disease, violence, and starvation. The tragedy has been described as one of Canada's hidden national disasters. In 1973, survivors established Tadul Lake, choosing another remote location so they could return closer to the caribou. Think about that. After nearly being destroyed as a people, they chose to rebuild on the land rather than disappear into larger towns. One elder who experienced the relocation as a child explained it simply: "The government moved us once and almost destroyed us. We moved ourselves here. This is ours." Every resident who remains today continues that statement. The Saisi Dene call themselves the caribou eaters. Caribou are more than food. They are central to culture, identity, clothing, tools, and tradition. The Dene language is still spoken. Hunting traditions continue. Ceremonies remain active. The community has chosen cultural survival in one of the harshest environments in Canada. The challenges are immense. Everything must be flown in. Jobs are limited. Services are distant. Intergenerational trauma remains profound, and declining caribou numbers worry everyone. Yet the resilience is remarkable. The elders who survived relocation are still here. Their grandchildren speak Dene and continue traditions. They rebuilt a community after nearly everything was taken from them. Number 4 is not really a town at all, but it may be Canada's most extreme example of isolation. Alert, Nunavut. Population 55 to 100 depending on season. Located on Ellesmere Island at 82 degrees 39 north latitude, Alert is the northernmost permanently inhabited place on Earth. It sits only 817 kilometers from the North Pole. Average annual temperatures are around -18 degrees Celsius. During winter, temperatures average about -32 degrees Celsius. From October to February, the sun never rises. From April to August, it never sets. Alert was established in 1950 as a Cold War signals intelligence station. Today it serves as a military surveillance post and the northernmost weather station on Earth. Unlike every other place on this list, nobody lives here permanently. Military personnel, weather staff, and researchers rotate through before eventually leaving. Psychological screening is required because the environment is extremely demanding. Months of darkness, isolation, limited recreation, and weather delays make life difficult. One military technician who completed a posting said, "You can't explain Alert to someone who hasn't been there. It breaks you down and builds you back up." He said the darkness was the hardest part. Yet he volunteered to return. The northern lights, the silence, and the experience of living at the edge of the world kept drawing him back. Alert represents the outer limit of human isolation. It is not about choosing to stay forever. It is about understanding how extreme isolation can be. Number 3. Bella Coola, British Columbia. Population approximately 2,500. This one is different because Bella Coola has a road. The interesting part is that residents built it themselves when the provincial government refused. Beginning in 1953, locals carved the Freedom Road through the mountains. Its most famous section, known as the Hill, drops 1,500 meters over 40 kilometers with steep grades and sharp switchbacks. For many residents, the hill acts as a filter rather than a barrier. Bella Coola sits at the head of a fjord within the Great Bear Rainforest, one of the last intact temperate rainforests on Earth. Grizzly bears fish for salmon in nearby rivers, making the area one of North America's best bear viewing destinations. The Nuksauk Nation has lived here for thousands of years. Today, the community includes Nuksauk citizens, descendants of Norwegian settlers, and newer arrivals. One ecotourism operator summed it up: "The hill isn't a barrier, it's a filter. It keeps out people who aren't serious about being here." She saw the valley for the first time and knew she had found home. Number 2. Francois, Newfoundland. Population 73. This tiny community sits inside a fjord on Newfoundland's south coast. A road connection is essentially impossible because of the terrain. Residents rely on provincial ferries to reach the outside world. Over the years, the provincial government has offered relocation incentives several times. The community repeatedly refused. Despite an aging population and limited healthcare access, the people who remain believe the place is worth preserving. One fisherman whose family has lived there for generations said, "They've tried to move us 3 times. We said no every time." A retiree who spent decades in street jobs eventually returned home. Every morning she drinks coffee overlooking the fjord and thinks, "This is heaven." The population has fallen dramatically over the years, and medical emergencies remain a concern, but residents understand the stakes. If they leave, Francois disappears. They chose to stay. And finally, number 1, Fogo Island, Newfoundland. Population 2,244. This may be the most surprising entry on the list. Fogo Island sits off Newfoundland's northeast coast and is connected to the mainland by ferry. When the cod moratorium devastated the fishing industry in 1992, many believed the island's future was over. Young people were leaving, jobs were disappearing, and relocation seemed inevitable. Then Zita Cobb returned home. After becoming a successful technology executive, she founded the Shorefast Foundation and helped create the Fogo Island Inn. Rooms start at around $2,000 per night. The inn employs dozens of local residents, and profits are reinvested into the community. It became one of the most unlikely economic success stories in Newfoundland. A local fisherman watched the transformation happen. They told us to leave. We stayed. Now people come from around the world. Artists arrived. Traditional crafts were revived. Young people began returning. Population decline stabilized. A young professional who returned to work with Shorefast explained, "I never thought I'd come back, but what's happening here is special. I wanted to be part of it." Challenges remain. Ferry schedules control daily life. Winter can feel long. Opportunities are still limited. But Fogo Island proves something important. Isolation does not have to mean decline. Communities can choose their own future. What connects all these places is not simply geography. It is choice. The people of Grise Fjord, Old Crow, Nain, Fort Chipewyan, Kugluktuk, Pond Inlet, Palatuk, Tadul Lake, Bellacoola, Francois, and Fogo Island have all answered the same question. What is a place worth? Most people would answer differently. They traded convenience for community, access for connection, and comfort for belonging. Maybe that sounds strange. Or maybe they have discovered something many people are still searching for. Belonging. What would you trade for a different kind of life? If you visited or lived in any of these places, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear what I missed. Thanks for watching.